Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about the 10 best horror movies I saw this year at Fantastic Fest. So I just got back from Fantastic Fest and it was amazing. I had such an incredible experience meeting so many different people and hanging out with other creators and all of that. But the real star of the show is the movies, and the movies were incredible this year. And it being my first year, I was just blown away on the depth of how many amazing movies there were. And it was really hard for me to narrow down to just my top 10, but I felt I needed to. I really wanted to really express what I think are the cream of the crop. Now, keep in mind, there is a number of movies that I really wanted to see this year that I wasn't able to get into. The main one is Obsession. Most of the other ones I was able to either see while I was there or get a screener and watch when I got home. But unfortunately, Obsession was just the hot ticket this year by Curry Barker, the same guy that made one of my favorite movies last year called Milk and Cereal. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. But anyway, this is what I think are the top 10 horror movies that I saw this year at Fantastic Fest. And with that, let's get to the list. Dysphoria is a 2025 Spanish horror movie, directed by Christopher Cartagena Gonzalez. It stars Claudia Salas, Najwa Nimri, and Eloy Azarin, a young couple fleeing with their 8-year-old daughter from the looting and chaos of their town, head to a rural house they bought in better times, with plans to sell it and flee to France. However, things take a dark and disturbing turn.
Trabajando con servicios mínimos. Y ahora, por favor, despeje la línea.
Le acabo de decir que mi marido ha desaparecido.
It was a real interesting experience for me seeing this movie because I had seen this string of movies that were downers, that were very bleak and dark. And that's kind of the way the festival went as it got towards the final couple days. It was a lot of really artsy movies that were very dark and uncomfortable, but really well made at the same time. But when you're also facing exhaustion, like I was really tired at this point, it made it more difficult to kind of really stay with some of these movies. But this is one of that crop that really stood out to me because yes, it is extremely dark, twisted, uncomfortable, not a happy movie at all, not a fun movie in a traditional sense at all. But the performances here are so good. The entire cast is incredible, and it really has a unique flavor to it. I don't want to get too into it, but there's an element of this that really stood out for me where there's a character using a streaming feed. You know, they're an online streamer. That's how they make a living, and showing disturbing things. And unfortunately, that's based in reality in a lot of ways. Maybe not to the extreme that it takes it in this movie, but there has been some really horrific things that different online creators have been doing to get views, to get, you know, that streamer dollar, because you can make a lot of money streaming if you can go viral. I get that, but it's really horrific, the depths and darkness that some people have and are putting into something that should just be fun and for entertainment. So in some ways, this is a cautionary tale. But beyond that, it is just a fantastic thrill ride of emotions that takes you up and down and left and right and keeps you guessing all the way to the end on the edge of your seat. And it constantly kept surprising me. When I thought it would do one thing, it would do something else, and vice versa. But this is one that won't work for everyone because it is super dark and bleak. But it's really well done, and if you're into indie film with incredible acting that are shot well, that are unique and well told as a story and all of that, this is one to definitely keep an eye out for.
Accepterat. Jag dog.
Meat Kills or Vleesdog is a 2025 Netherlands horror movie. Directed by Martijan Smits, it stars Karl Dirks, Sim Ben Yakker, and Emma Joosten. To join an activist group, Mirta films a pig farmer's cruelty, but later when they return to free the pigs, they're already dead. So the leader of the group seeks revenge on the farmer's children, forcing Mirta to choose sides as violence erupts.
Waar is de rest? We zijn te laat. Ze hebben bloed aangenomen, ze verdienen dit. Genoeg! Nee, het is niet genoeg!
This was honestly one of the biggest surprises of the entire experience because I didn't get a chance to see this. I wasn't able to get into it while it was playing at the festival, but I reached out to them and a few other filmmakers after it was over and asked to get a screener, and they were so kind as to send one over. And I was floored because this movie is so good. Once again, it's a very dark, very disturbing, twisted movie that's not fun in a traditional sense, and is not going to work for everyone because it's extremely bleak and it lives in that same kind of universe as a movie like Speak No Evil. So if you were a fan of that, then I think this is one of the probably be up your alley. But it's vicious, it's violent, it's extremely gory, graphic, and brutal. It's also really surprising. It takes so many different directions that I was not expecting it to take. And I'll go even as far as to say it shocked me at times with the lengths that it goes and what it does. And I have talked to the filmmaker Martin Smits. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, but he told me that they're working on trying to get distribution here in the United States, but they're getting close. So you're definitely going to see this movie available in one way or another within the next year. But this is so well shot. The sound design, the editing, the performances, everything is top notch in this. So if you like them bleak, dark, very disturbing, this is one to definitely keep an eye out for.
Silent night, deadly night.
Silent Night, Deadly Night is a 2025 slasher horror movie written and directed by Mike P. Nelson. It stars Rowan Campbell, Ruby Modine, and David Lawrence Brown. A child witnesses his parents murdered by a man in a Santa suit. Years later, as an adult, he dons a Santa costume himself and embarks on a violent quest. This was another huge surprise for me because I didn't even really want to see this. This was one of the secret screenings, so we didn't know officially going in what we were about to see. But in this case, really all of the secret screenings we knew by the time we sat down what was playing. But this one for sure, everybody was well aware of what we were about to watch. And I wasn't really thrilled at all. I almost thought about trying to see something else, but when the secret screenings went down, they were in almost every theater. And either way, I was like, at the very least, I'd like to be able to tell you guys if it's worth seeing or not. And I was just floored. This movie is so much fun, and it blows me away how unique it is and creative, because I am not a big fan of remakes. The only time I feel like a remake is worth doing is if it takes some risk and does something different. If it takes kind of the inspiration, the soul, so to speak, of that first movie, and then does something very different, especially with the tone with that. And this does. This takes some big swings, and at first I wasn't even sure if some of those things were gonna work, but about halfway through this movie, it really won me over, and I was just so in for the ride. For one, Rowan Campbell is amazing in this, but the whole cast, like everybody in this, does such a phenomenal job. They're fun to watch. This movie is super funny. It's also extremely gory and graphic, over the top. It pays homage to the original while still very much doing its own thing and taking it in some wild, unexpected directions. But this one comes out in theaters right after my birthday on December 12th. So definitely mark your calendars, because this is one I think you're definitely gonna have a good time with. Primate is a 2025 horror movie, directed and co-written by Johannes Roberts. It stars Johnny Sequoia, Jessica Alexander, and Troy Kotzer. Home from college, Lucy reunites with her family, including a chimp named Ben. But when Ben contracts rabies during a pool party, he turns aggressive, putting Lucy and her friends in a fight for survival. This one was such a fun experience. It's another one that is very, very fun, entertaining, exciting, and all of that. But it was the movie that kicked off the festival. And what a way to kick it off. I was so surprised. I knew nothing at all about this movie going in. And so I was really surprised. It has a really quick start to it as well, where it gets you on board right away. And you're like, oh, okay, so this is what we're doing here. But it's a movie that doesn't take itself too serious. So there's a very fun quality about it. while at the same time feeling like if you were to take Halloween, Michael Myers Halloween, and mix it with Cujo. I mean, there's just this fun quality about this chimp that's basically stalking and killing its victims. It doesn't maybe sound great on paper, but the way it's put together and how well it's shot and directed by Johannes Roberts, as well as the cast, they're these young CW teens, these pretty teens, and so I wasn't so sure I was gonna like it once I kind of saw the look of it and all of that, but the way it's handled, the way it's done, the directions it takes, and how vicious and merciless and gory it gets sold me and really make all of that work in this strange way, because there's this bright kind of poppy quality to it where it kind of has what I call a CW sheen to it, where it's just glowing a little bit too, I don't know, polished, right? But with the dark directions that it goes, it's just juxtaposed in a way that make it very, very entertaining. And it's also one of those movies that has such a simple premise, but the execution, the different directions that it takes, you're constantly on the edge of your seat. This movie is rapid, constantly things happening. This movie gets going quick and never stops, really leaving you just feeling breathless by the end. But I think Primate is one of the best creature feature, like animal attack horror movies we've had in a very, very, very long time. But it drops in theaters on January 9th next year. And I think it's one you guys are gonna definitely have a great time with.
Riley.
Shelby Oaks is a 2024 supernatural horror movie. Produced, written, and directed by Chris Duckman in his feature directorial debut. It stars Camille Sullivan, Sarah Dern, and Brendan Sexton III. The plot's about a woman's desperate search for her long-lost sister, but she falls into obsession when she realizes that the imaginary demon from their childhood may have been real.
Today we're taking our first foray into the abandoned town of Shelby Oaks.
I've been anticipating this movie for years now, because even last year at Fantastic Fest, this was going around and doing a few different film festivals, and then it got picked up, but we kept thinking for the last couple years it was going to get released. But technically it was released last year because it had a couple showings at festivals, but in reality it's getting released this year. We saw it at Fantastic Fest, but then it'll be in theaters on October 24th this year. But I had a great time with this movie. I think it's really well done, and especially for a first-time filmmaker. My biggest concern is that people are going to be overhyped going into this and expecting too much from it. So I think as long as you keep your expectations in check like I was able to, I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's a really mysterious movie that takes a lot of twists and turns, and you're kind of, for a big chunk of it, trying to figure out what exactly is going on here and what happened to this woman's sister. But it plays with online mysteries and stories and stuff, especially the kind of stuff that we saw a lot of in like the early 2000 teens. Because the premise of this is basically this woman is searching for her sister that disappeared, who had kind of a ghost hunting YouTube show where her and a couple friends would travel around the country investigating different haunted locations, and then they go to one and literally just disappear, kind of thing. And so she's searching for answers, trying to figure out what happened to her sister. But what really stood out for me the most about this movie, and why I'm so glad they're releasing it in October, is the atmosphere. It has this creepy, spooky, haunted house almost kind of feel about it. The mood, the lighting, and in a lot of ways it reminds me of horror that we don't see much of anymore. Stuff that was like in the late 90s, early 2000s, that had that dark castle almost flavor, where it takes everything serious, but there's an element of fun to it and an element of creepy, spooky enjoyment there. It's not so bleak, so dark and all of that you're not having a good time with it. But I was surprised at the directions it goes and how creepy it actually gets. I mean, there are some scenes that I think will definitely get you. But besides how well shot, written, and directed it is, Camille Sullivan's performance as the lead in this is outstanding. I mean, her emotional depth and journey she goes on and takes you with her on is really impressive stuff. But like I said, this one comes out in theaters on October 24th, and I think you absolutely need to get out to a theater and check it out. "13 Days Till Summer" is a 2025 Polish slasher horror movie, directed by Bartosz M. Kowalski and written by Thor Magnusson. It stars Katarzyna Galaska, Peter Kozar, and Nicole Bogdanowicz. A Friday night in Poland takes a deadly turn when a guest arrives at a party with a crossbow instead of snacks, turning the evening into a fight for survival.
Kto to?
This was such an incredible experience for me seeing this movie, and it's something I'll never forget because the filmmaker Bartosz M. Kowalski did a couple other movies that I'm a big fan of. He did a movie called Hellhole and then another one called No One Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. There's actually two of them, and those are all on Netflix. And I reviewed those a while back, like when they came out and stuff. Well, he recognized me and introduced himself, and we got to talking, and I found out that he had a movie there, this movie, and we just kind of became fast friends, as well as the writer, Thor, and just hung out and talked a lot throughout the next couple days. And they invited me to sit with them while we watched this movie, and that was just so cool to sit with the writer and director and watch their movie. And I was blown away by it because in a lot of ways, it's just a slick teen home invasion slasher. And so for a lot of it, you're like, yes, it's well done, it's well shot, and interesting, choices of camera work and things like that. But for the most part, it's a pretty traditional, what you would expect from a slasher. But then it started surprising me with how brutal some of the kills were and the directions it takes with some of those. But then the real showstopper for me was the way this movie ends. It's so brutal, so bleak, so savage, and just I loved it. It made me so excited because you don't see movies with the balls to end in a way that is not necessarily going to make everybody happy. It's something I really love about a lot of foreign horror is that they're not as worried about being commercially popular and they could just make a good story and a good movie and have it go in whatever directions they want it to, instead of being like, oh, well, if I end it so-and-so way, people may not be happy. It may not explain everything or whatever. And people might not be big fans of it because the ending or whatever. They just end it the way they want to. Kind of like, once again, talking about Speak No Evil, where that movie just is so fucked up in the way that it ends, but it doesn't apologize for it. It's just like, bam, this is what we're doing. And that's how I felt about this movie. Beyond that, there's such fun, creative qualities. Like the house they're in is incredible. And it has all these gates that come down and lock. And so they're all locked inside with the killer. And they don't know who the killer is, but the killer wears this incredibly cool, creepy mask. It's like this strange, expressionless, upside down face. And I'll hopefully put a picture here so you can see what I'm talking about. But it's just so creepy watching this killer run around killing people with a crossbow or in different brutal ways. And I really liked it. I also loved the writing, the way the characters are written, their conversations. They felt like real friends. They felt like real people I've known, and they make decisions like teenagers really would, like I would have. It just felt very well done. But then, like I said, that ending is what just floored me. Unfortunately, at the time I'm recording this, we don't know if this movie is ever going to get an American release. Bartosz is going to keep in touch and let me know if anything changes on that front. But right now, the Netflix Poland is, I believe, who owns it. They have no desire to sell it or distribute it to anywhere outside of Poland. So unfortunately, that's just kind of the situation we're in right now. But I will definitely keep you guys posted because this is one I think you all absolutely need to see once it comes out.
I love you.
Vicious is a 2025 horror movie. Written and directed by Brian Bertino, it stars Dakota Fanning, Catherine Hunter, and Mary McCormick. A woman spends the night fighting for her existence as she slips down a rabbit hole contained inside of a gift from a late-night visitor.
I'm gonna call the police now.
You can't do that. Don't tell anyone. Don't you dare.
This is such a slick, very cool movie, and holy crap, does Dakota Fanning give an incredible performance here. I am a big fan of her. Like, everything she's in, I just think she puts all of herself into. Even when the movie may not be great, her performance is always top notch. My favorite thing I think I've seen her do is Brimstone as far as performance-wise, but this one's right up there with that. But this movie surprised me with how vicious, how dark, how disturbing and bleak it goes. But it was done by Brian Bertino, who, if you're familiar with his work, one of my favorite recent movies he did was The Dark and the Wicked. And that movie is evil, dark, disturbing stuff. And this has a lot of the same DNA as that. It's cool because it is set at Christmas time, and it definitely sprinkles Christmas throughout it. But it's also still a very vicious, dark horror movie, and it's being released this month. But it comes out October 10th, so right around the time you're seeing this video, it should be either out or about to come out. But it's really moody, atmospheric, creepy. I love the way it's shot. The sound design is incredible. Just the way it even uses silence or the crunching of the snow or whatever, it really makes a lot of this pop. But I know this movie is definitely not going to please everybody. Like, I mean, no movies really do, but this is not going to probably be a mainstream hit, especially because the ending is a little bit ambiguous. It doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you exactly what to think or exactly what, even happens. It leaves it in kind of a mysterious place that you're left with kind of having to come up with your own answers. For me, it really worked because the answers I came away with made a lot of sense and really connected to me, because the underlying core issue of this movie is your main character, played by Dakota Fanning, is super depressed and on the verge of self-harm. Like, she is right on that teetering point, and that is kind of an underlying story of what this movie is really about. But I don't want to say any more than that because I don't want to spoil anything about this, because I think even if you don't love it, it's definitely one worth seeing. Unfortunately, it's not getting a theatrical release. It is just going straight to Paramount Plus, but at least you'll be able to see it and you'll be able to watch it at home if you have a Paramount Plus account, or, just try out their free trial for whatever and watch this. Either way, I think it's one that's definitely worth your time.
My fucking house!
Dolly is a 2025 horror movie, written and directed by Rob Blackhurst. It stars Fabian Charisse, Russ Tiller, and Sean William Scott. Macy, a young woman, is abducted by a monstrous figure intent on raising her as their own child.
We gotta go. We gotta hurry, please.
In so many ways, this movie was what I really wanted In a Violent Nature to be, because this has that same brutality. This has that same gory, brutal quality, and that, like a new slasher, iconic, creepy figure, cool mask, backstory, all that is cool and creepy and all of that, but it doesn't have a lot of the boring stretches of walking through the woods. And that just didn't work for me. I understand that movie really works for a lot of people, and that's fine. I'm not saying I hated that. It just didn't really get me in the way. It didn't scratch the kind of itch that I was hoping it would. But this one does. It has this gritty 1970s exploitation kind of feel in the way that it's shot. It was shot on film, and you can tell it has this cool richness, and the coloring and all of that is really contrasted. So it has this vicious, gritty, dirty quality about it. But more than anything, it's just a simple, brutal slasher. It isn't reinventing the genre. It's not doing anything necessarily you've never seen before. It just does it all really, really well. And because of that, if you're a fan of slashers, this movie's a lot of fucking fun. And I honestly think, of any of the movies I saw, this is the one that I think we're going to see the biggest buzz about when it comes out, because I think horror fans love this kind of thing, you know, with Art the Clown and things like that. And this is this other new iconic slasher killer that is just brutal and unforgiving. And it's just well done. Like I said, it scratches that itch if you're a big fan of gritty, dirty slashers. So I don't know exactly when this is going to be released yet. I know there are definitely a number of companies interested. And from last I heard, it shouldn't have much problems at all getting distributed here in the States. My guess would be probably middle to late next year is when we'll see this one come out. But I'm really hoping it gets a theatrical release because, like I said, being shot on film and having that gritty, sweaty quality about it, it works so well on the big screen. But without a doubt, this is one you definitely need to keep an eye out for. Black Phone 2 is a 2025 supernatural horror movie, directed by Scott Derrickson and written by Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. It's a sequel to The Black Phone from 2021 and stars Mason Thames, Madeline McGraw, and Ethan Hawke. Finn, now 17, struggles with life after his captivity, and his sister begins receiving calls in her dreams from the Black Phone and seeing disturbing visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter camp called Alpine Lake. So I won't talk too much about this one because I have done an individual review of it right out of the theater, as well as in my last video, I talked about it as a movie that I think works perfect for the Halloween season. So definitely go and check that out. But I just love this. It's not one that's going to work for everybody because if you were a big fan of the first, like it was your #1 movie that year, this may not quite work for you, at least on the same level as it did for me. Because I really liked the first one, but it wasn't my favorite movie that year. Whereas this is exactly what I want to see. This is the grabber, over the top, like Ethan Hawke's character, the grabber, gets to really explore this character now. It's like he's unleashed. He can do anything, say anything. And I love that element. It makes him so much more creepy and scary and all that. Whereas in that first movie, he's just this ominous presence. He doesn't necessarily do a ton. You don't see him doing a ton of things. Whereas in this, he is ever present and brutally killing people. This one's way more gory and graphic and just absolutely goes for it in every way. But I also think if you're someone that's very critical of movies and tend to kind of pick them apart and find the flaws and all that, you're going to definitely find problems with this. And, you know, so it may not work for you if you are that type of viewer. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just letting you know this is more of a popcorn, fun, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 kind of attitude movie than it is a more grounded mystery, crime, supernatural movie like the first one was. But The Black Phone 2 hits theaters on October 17th, and I think it's an absolute blast and one you definitely need to get out to a theater and check out. The Holy Boy is a 2025 Italian horror movie, co-written and directed by Paolo Strapoli. It stars Michelle Riandino, Romana Magori Vergiano, and Giulio Feltri. In Italy's happiest village, a haunted teacher discovers dark secrets behind weekly gatherings where locals seek healing from a teenage boy's embrace. So he begins a quest to save the youth, only to reveal the sinister nature behind the community's joy.
Vuole smettere di soffrire.
This one absolutely blew me away, and so I had to put it as my #1 movie for lots of reasons. For one, it's a totally original movie, not an IP, not a sequel, nothing like that, but it's so well written. The performances are incredible, and it takes you on this winding, twisting, weird story, and for a lot of it, it feels more like a drama. But then as it goes, it gets more and more dark and uncomfortable. And as it continues down this road, you start realizing this movie is going to get darker and darker and more sinister. And eventually, in the final act especially, it gets full-blown horror and was pretty shocking and twisted and absolutely surprised me with how dark and savage it went. But it's a movie that isn't necessarily gonna scare you, but it's more of something that's gonna make you uncomfortable and just make you feel uneasy and like there's something not right. And so you constantly have that feeling of like the other foot's about to drop. You just don't know what it's gonna be. But I'm a huge fan of movies, especially that make me think, that make me mull them over long after I've seen them. And this is one of those that is stuck in my head ever since I saw it. I can't wait to actually rewatch this once it eventually gets a release. But it's also a fantastic looking movie. It's well edited, well put together. It is a little bit of a slow moving, prodding along dialogue movie, at least for quite a bit of it. But like I said, in the final act especially, it starts to really show its teeth and gets a lot more dark and brutal and exciting. But I really do think this movie is fantastic. I can't wait to see what this filmmaker does in the future going forward, and I really can't wait to see what you guys think of this movie once it's made available to the rest of the public here, hopefully in the near future. But that's my list of what I thought were the best 10 movies, at least that I got to see from Fantastic Fest 2025. But if you were there in attendance, I'd love to hear down in the comments, what were your favorites? Beyond that, if you watch this down the road when a lot of these are out and you've seen them and stuff, leave comments letting me know what of this list you think I was right about, what I was wrong about, and all that. It's just fun to have those conversations down in the comments. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And I'll see you guys next time.